So you want to run YouTube. Let anyone on Earth upload a video, host it for free, stream it to billions of people around the world, and somehow build one of the most valuable media businesses in history off the back of it. No studio deals, no film crews on your payroll, no negotiating with a handful of TV networks for shelf space. Just an upload button and a recommendation algorithm deciding what a few billion people watch next, running quietly in the background, second by second, on a scale that's genuinely hard to picture until you start adding up the numbers underneath it. Here's the problem. Every single video sitting on that platform, all the way from a 15-second clip to a 3-hour documentary, has to be stored somewhere forever and served up instantly to anyone who wants to watch it, whenever they want to watch it, on whatever device they happen to be holding. That's not a small technical detail. That's the entire business, and it's a genuinely staggering amount of infrastructure hiding behind what looks like a simple website with a play button on it. Let's start with storage, because this is where people's intuition about the internet completely breaks down. Every minute, hundreds of hours of video get uploaded to the platform. Not viewed, uploaded. New footage arriving continuously that has to be processed, encoded into multiple resolutions and formats so it plays smoothly whether someone's watching on a 5-year-old phone with a weak signal or a brand new TV on fiber internet, and then stored somewhere permanently. Because unlike a TV network that airs something once and moves on, this platform is expected to keep essentially everything available indefinitely. A video from over a decade ago with 12 views still has to be sitting on a server somewhere, ready to load instantly the moment someone clicks it, even though almost nobody is watching it anymore. That's the part that makes this business genuinely strange compared to almost any other media company. A traditional broadcaster only has to distribute what's currently airing. This platform has to be ready at any given second to instantly serve any video that has ever been uploaded to it, to anyone, anywhere, which means the total amount of stored video only ever goes up. It never really gets smaller. Every year adds another year's worth of uploads on top of everything that came before, and all of it has to remain retrievable. Now, here's a detail that catches people off guard when they first hear it. Storage itself, just sitting on a hard drive somewhere, is actually the cheaper half of this problem. The genuinely expensive part is bandwidth, the cost of actually delivering that video to a viewer's device every single time it's watched, over and over, without any of that cost ever going away, just because the video itself has already been paid for once. Every view, every single one, involves data traveling from a server through a chain of network infrastructure all the way to whatever device the person is holding. And that data transfer costs real money each time it happens, scaled across billions of views a day across the entire platform. A video that gets watched once costs relatively little. A video that goes viral and gets watched 50 million times in a week is, from a pure infrastructure standpoint, 50 million individual delivery events, each one drawing on real computing and network resources, regardless of whether that video is generating any advertising revenue that matches the cost of actually showing it to that many people. This is why the platform invests so heavily in something called a content delivery network, essentially a web of servers positioned physically close to where people actually live, spread out geographically so that a viewer in one part of the world isn't pulling video data from a server on the other side of the planet every time they hit play. Building and maintaining that kind of globally distributed infrastructure in enough locations to actually keep latency low and buffering minimal for a genuinely global audience is a capital-intensive undertaking that very few companies on Earth could realistically fund, let alone operate at the scale this requires. There's a physical reality underneath all of this that's easy to lose sight of when everything feels like it's just happening on a screen. Data centers. All of that video, every single hour of it, sits on physical hard drives inside physical buildings. And those buildings need power, cooling, redundant backup systems in case any individual facility fails, and enough spare capacity to handle sudden traffic spikes, like when a major news event happens and millions of people simultaneously want to watch coverage of it in the same few minutes. Building a data center capable of reliably storing and serving video at this scale costs hundreds of millions of dollars per facility. And a company operating at this size needs a network of them spread across multiple continents, not just for capacity, but for redundancy. If one facility goes offline, others need to be able to absorb that load instantly without users ever noticing a disruption. Let's talk about how any of this actually generates money, because the core mechanism is advertising, and it's a genuinely different kind of advertising business than what came before it. Traditional television sold advertising based on estimated audience size for a given show, a fairly blunt instrument. You're buying access to whoever happens to be watching this specific program at this specific time. This platform sells advertising against individual videos and individual viewers, which sounds like a small distinction, but is actually the entire reason the business works at the scale it does. An advertiser can target a message toward a specific demographic, a specific interest category, even a specific stage of someone's buying decision, and pay accordingly, which generally commands a meaningfully higher rate than a blunt, one-size-fits-all broadcast ad ever could. But here's the part that makes the economics genuinely complicated. The platform doesn't keep all of that advertising revenue. A significant share, generally understood to be somewhere around 55%, goes directly to the creator who made the video, a split that's been remarkably stable over the years precisely because changing it in either direction carries genuine risk to the entire ecosystem the platform depends on. This is a fundamentally different arrangement than a traditional media company, which typically owns its content outright and keeps the overwhelming majority of what advertising on that content brings in. Here, the platform is essentially running a massive revenue-sharing operation with millions of independent creators simultaneously, none of whom are employees, all of whom can walk away and take their audience with them if they decide the deal isn't working for them anymore. This creates a genuinely interesting incentive structure. The platform needs creators to keep making content people actually want to watch, because the platform itself makes almost nothing without them. But it also needs to keep enough of the advertising revenue to cover the truly enormous cost of storing and delivering all of that content in the first place. That 55% creator split isn't arbitrary. It has to be generous enough to keep the best creators from taking their audience somewhere else. But the remaining share has to be enough to cover infrastructure costs that scale directly with how much content those same creators are uploading and how many people are watching it. Now, not every video makes real advertising money, and this is where a lot of the platform's actual profitability gets decided. Advertisers pay dramatically different rates depending on the content category, the audience demographic, and even the time of year. A video aimed at an audience with real purchasing power in a category advertisers care about, like personal finance or technology reviews, can command a genuinely higher rate per 1,000 views than a video with a huge audience of, say, kids watching cartoons, where advertisers historically pay less and where the platform has, at various points, faced real regulatory pressure around how it handles advertising and data collection for content aimed at children in the first place. This means raw view count, the number most people assume determines how much money a video makes, is actually a pretty unreliable predictor of the video's real financial value to the platform. There's an entire secondary economy that's grown up around the platform that's worth understanding, because it's not directly part of the company's own revenue, but genuinely shapes how the whole ecosystem functions. Multi-channel networks, talent management agencies, and an entire industry of editors, thumbnail designers, and production companies now exist purely to serve creators trying to compete on the platform. Because at a certain size, running a channel stops being something one person can do alone in their spare time and starts looking like running an actual small media company with all the overhead that implies. This matters to the platform's own economics because it raises the bar for what professional content looks like, which pushes up production quality across the board, which in turn makes advertisers more comfortable spending real money on the platform instead of treating it as a lower-tier alternative to traditional television. But it also means a meaningful share of what a successful creator earns from that 55% split never actually reaches them directly, because it's already being split further with the team helping them produce content at that level. Merchandise and brand deals have also become a huge part of how successful creators actually make money, and this is genuinely important to understand because it changes the platform's own leverage in the relationship. A creator who's built a large enough audience can often make more from a single sponsored segment in a video, paid directly by a brand, rather than through the platform's own advertising system, than they make from the platform's ad revenue share on that same video. This means the platform doesn't have a monopoly on a creator's income the way a traditional employer would, which keeps genuine competitive pressure on the platform to keep its own payout terms reasonably attractive, because a creator with real brand deal leverage has real options if they decide the platform's cut isn't worth it anymore. Let's talk about content moderation, because this is a cost category that's grown enormously over the years and one that almost nobody outside the company fully appreciates. With that much video being uploaded every single minute, keeping the platform free of content that violates its policies, copyright infringement, harmful misinformation, content that's unsafe for advertisers to appear next to, requires a combination of automated detection systems and enormous teams of human reviewers working around the clock across multiple languages and cultural contexts. This isn't a cost that scales down during a quiet quarter. It scales directly with how much content gets uploaded, which only ever goes up, and a moderation failure that lets something genuinely harmful slip through and go viral can trigger the kind of reputational and regulatory damage that costs far more than the moderation system itself ever would have. There's also copyright to deal with, and this became its own massive infrastructure project in its own right, arguably one of the most technically ambitious systems the company has ever had to build. The platform built an automated system that scans every single uploaded video against a database of copyrighted material submitted by rights holders, movie studios, record labels, and individual creators. And when it finds a match, it can automatically flag the video, split advertising revenue with the rights holder, or block it entirely depending on what the copyright owner has requested. Building and maintaining a system capable of matching video and audio fingerprints against a database that size, at the speed and volume required to process everything being uploaded continuously, was itself a multi-year, extraordinarily expensive engineering project, and it remains a significant ongoing cost simply to keep functioning as more content and more copyright claims pour in every single day. Live streaming adds its own layer of cost and complexity on top of everything already covered, because it's a genuinely different technical problem than serving pre-recorded video. A stored video only has to be encoded once and can then be delivered from wherever it's cached closest to a given viewer. But a live stream has to be encoded, distributed, and delivered in real time, simultaneously, to however many people happen to be watching at that exact moment, with delay measured in seconds, rather than the more forgiving buffering tolerance a pre-recorded video allows. A single massively popular live stream, a major gaming tournament, or a global news event can spike demand on the platform's live infrastructure by an enormous amount in a very short window. And unlike a pre-recorded video's traffic, which tends to build and fade more gradually, live traffic can arrive almost instantly and just as quickly disappear the moment the stream ends, which makes capacity planning for live infrastructure a genuinely different and harder problem than planning for on-demand video traffic. Now, let's talk about the algorithm, because this is genuinely the most important piece of the entire business, more important in a lot of ways than the storage and bandwidth infrastructure underneath it. With an amount of content this large, nobody could ever browse through it manually to find something worth watching. The recommendation system that decides what shows up next, on the homepage, in the sidebar, in the autoplay queue, is what actually determines how long someone stays on the platform, and watch time is the metric that ultimately drives how many ads get shown, and therefore how much money the whole system generates. This creates a genuinely interesting tension at the heart of the business. The algorithm is optimized to maximize how long people keep watching, because that directly maximizes advertising revenue, but that same optimization can end up rewarding content that's engineered specifically to be addictive or attention-grabbing, rather than content that's necessarily good for the people watching it, which has led to real recurring criticism and regulatory scrutiny over the years about whether a business model built around maximizing watch time is fundamentally at odds with the well-being of the audience. It's serving particularly younger audiences who may have less ability to regulate their own viewing habits. The platform has responded with things like watch time reminders and parental controls, features that, in a purely revenue-maximizing sense, work directly against the platform's own core metric, which tells you something honest about how genuinely uncomfortable this tension actually is when regulators and public pressure force the company to confront it directly, rather than quietly optimizing around it. Let's talk about the subscription side of the business, because advertising isn't the only revenue stream anymore, and it's become an increasingly important one. A paid, ad-free subscription tier gives the platform a second, more predictable revenue stream that doesn't depend entirely on advertiser demand, which can be genuinely volatile depending on the broader economy. Subscribers also tend to watch more content than free users, partly because there's no ad interruption pushing them away, which is good for overall engagement, but also means the platform is essentially trading advertising revenue for subscription revenue on a per-user basis, a trade-off that only makes sense if the subscription price is calibrated correctly relative to what that same user would have generated in ad revenue over the same viewing time. Let's talk about what can go wrong in this business, because even at this almost incomprehensible scale, the model has real vulnerabilities. Advertiser sentiment can shift quickly and painfully. If a wave of high-profile content ends up next to major brand advertising and generates public backlash, advertisers can pull spending rapidly across the entire platform, not just from the specific videos involved in what the industry has at various points called an adpocalypse, a sudden, broad pullback in advertiser confidence that can meaningfully depress revenue for months while trust gets rebuilt, even though the vast majority of content on the platform had nothing to do with whatever triggered the panic in the first place. There's also a real structural tension between the platform and the creators who generate almost all of its content, because those creators aren't employees and can, in theory, walk away. Though in practice it's genuinely difficult for most of them to rebuild an audience of comparable size anywhere else. Still, when the platform changes its algorithm, adjusts its monetization policies, or shifts what kind of content gets promoted, it can meaningfully affect the livelihood of millions of creators simultaneously, some of whom depend entirely on that income, and managing that relationship at scale. Keeping enough creators happy enough to keep producing content people want to watch is a genuinely constant balancing act that never really gets solved once and stays solved. There's a real case study worth looking at here because it shows how quickly advertiser confidence can evaporate, even at massive scale. A few years back, reports surfaced that ads from major brands were appearing alongside inappropriate content involving children, and the backlash was swift and severe. Several large advertisers paused their spending on the platform entirely, while the company scrambled to overhaul its content moderation and advertiser safety systems. The financial hit wasn't just the immediate lost ad revenue during the pause, it was the multi-year investment required afterward to rebuild systems and rebuild trust, hiring thousands of additional human moderators, overhauling how content aimed at children was classified and monetized, and giving advertisers far more granular control over exactly what kind of content their ads could appear alongside, none of which came cheap, and none of which existed at that level of sophistication before the crisis forced the issue. It's a good example of how a relatively narrow content problem involving a small fraction of total uploads can cascade into a genuinely enormous cost and reputational event for the entire platform. So how does this business actually work in plain mechanical terms once you strip away all of this complexity? Total advertising revenue plus subscription revenue, minus the creator revenue share paid out on ad-supported content, minus the cost of storage and bandwidth to actually deliver every video watched, minus content moderation and trust and safety operations, minus the ongoing engineering cost of running and improving the recommendation algorithm and copyright systems. For a platform at this scale, the infrastructure cost alone, just keeping everything stored and instantly deliverable to billions of people, runs into the many billions of dollars annually, and that's before a single dollar goes toward the creator payouts that make up the majority of what advertisers actually pay for in the first place. Here's the volatility layered on top of that math. Advertiser demand tracks the broader economy fairly closely. During an economic downturn, ad budgets are often among the first things companies cut, which can compress revenue significantly even while viewership and content uploads keep climbing steadily. Content moderation costs can spike unpredictably in response to a single major incident that requires an emergency response and additional staffing. And competition for viewer attention from other platforms, particularly short-form video competitors that have aggressively targeted the exact same advertising dollars and the exact same creator talent, can force costly adjustments to both the algorithm and the creator payout structure, just to keep both audiences and top creators from drifting elsewhere. Let's put together the two versions of a single year for a business like this. In a strong year, advertiser demand is robust across most content categories. The algorithm is successfully surfacing content that keeps people watching longer without triggering a moderation crisis. Subscription growth continues steadily, and no major brand safety incident forces an expensive advertiser pullback. Under those conditions, the platform generates enormous advertising and subscription revenue that comfortably covers infrastructure and creator payout costs, with a genuinely healthy margin left over. In a difficult year, a brand safety incident triggers a temporary advertiser pullback that takes months to fully recover from. A short-form video competitor pulls meaningful viewer attention and forces a costly increase in creator payouts to retain top talent. Content moderation costs spike due to a wave of harmful content requiring emergency review capacity. And storage and bandwidth costs continue climbing steadily regardless of any of this, because uploads never stop even when revenue softens. Under those conditions, margins can compress significantly even while the platform still looks, from the outside, like the dominant, unshakable video platform it's always been, still hosting billions of hours of content, still the first place most people go to watch or upload a video. The difference between those 2 years can run into billions of dollars, and almost none of it shows up as one dramatic headline. It's a slightly softer advertising quarter here, a moderation cost spike there, a creator payout increase forced by competitive pressure, compounding quietly against a backdrop of upload numbers and viewership figures that keep climbing regardless of what's actually happening on the revenue side of the business. The home page still loads the same way. The recommendations still feel personalized. The upload button still works exactly the same whether it's a good quarter or a rough one, because nothing about the actual product experience changes based on which version of the year is unfolding behind the scenes on a spreadsheet nobody watching a video will ever see. So if you ever find yourself trying to understand how a platform that lets anyone upload a video for free can be one of the most valuable media businesses ever built, remember the one thing that actually explains it. It was never really about how many videos get uploaded. It's about whether the advertising revenue generated by the small fraction of videos anyone actually watches can keep covering the cost of storing, delivering, and moderating literally everything else, forever, whether anyone ever watches it again or not.